You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Hope you like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have local singer and songwriter Thomas Claxton in the studio. Although he is on the road a lot, and these days you don't often see him around Savannah, he has a regular Sunday night gig at the Warehouse on River Street. Welcome, Thomas Claxton.
Hi, Dave. How are you, buddy?
Let's talk a little bit about your background, about your musical journey to this point.
When I was a kid in school, I wanted to join the band, and my parents didn't want to spend the money on something they didn't think I might stick with. So they didn't let me join band, and I wound up joining the chorus, which was the best thing that could have happened to me. I wound up studying chorus in Effingham County. Went up from elementary school into middle school and eventually into high school and studied under Dr. Lauren Ringwall and Mr. Jack Mullis in the early parts of it. I went from there, and my junior year of high school, I decided I wanted to give it a shot and go out and playing live in front of people, and I taught myself how to play guitar. Started off in a coffee shop called Savannah Joe's Coffee Shop in the Savannah Mall. Played there for a couple of years. Best time to make any money doing that was during the Christmas holidays, obviously. But I never got paid anything for that. It was all for tips. But it was a good way for me to kind of go out and get used to playing in front of people and get the calluses build up on the fingers and things like that, kind of cut my teeth in it. Like I said, I did that through my junior and senior year. The following year, I wound up thinking about going out into the downtown area, and I stumbled upon the Bayou Cafe on River Street, talked to the owner, Jerry Zambito, and I asked him what I would have to do to play a gig, and he looked at me and he basically said, "Well, where's your guitar?" I said, "Well, it's in the car." He goes, "All right, well, go get it and get on stage." I was like, "Right now?" And he said, "Yeah, you want a gig, don't you? Shut up and go play." So I said, "Okay." I went and grabbed the guitar and played about an hour there at the Bayou, and he was watching me, and he started calling me for gigs, and the rest was history after that. I wound up played a bunch of different venues, and I think in the Savannah scene alone, I've probably played about 112 venues at one point. A lot of them have closed down now. I mean, places like W.G. Shuckers and places like that, they're no longer here. Some of them still are, though. I played Bayou and Bernie's and the Warehouse and places like that, and I used to play on the islands a good bit, but I haven't done that in a long time. The downtown scene keeps my gigs booked up. It's not that I don't love the islands anymore, it's just that I really don't have the time to go out there and book it.
And so you started really singing, and then you picked up the guitar later because you wanted to perform.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, singing was always my thing. I was always fascinated by actually learning the technical side of vocals. A lot of people think you just get up there and do it. That's really not true if you're really an actual vocalist. There's a lot of training that goes into it, and I had the privilege of being classically trained. I studied under Dr. Lauren Ringwall, and I had some guidance from a professor out at Armstrong named Scott Buchanan. And I studied music theory in school and learned how to read music, all the charts and like chart stuff. And there's just a lot more that goes into it, and I learned how to control my voice more efficiently than I would have just kind of singing in the shower and going out and doing it. Different exercises and things like that.
And what aspects about vocal training do you think was most advantageous to what you do now?
Definitely, for example, like the exercises, it's very important to know how to warm your voice up. Especially, I found this to be true later on because my style of singing now is very different from what I was doing in school. Obviously, you don't go out singing styles of like the Foo Fighters and Alice Cooper and things like that the same way you would sing a classical song. But the exercises definitely help out, and knowing the correct posture and pushing from the diaphragm. A lot of people know that, but very few of them actually do it. There's a lot of different aspects of it, but those are some of the things that I put to use every day, and it really helps me out a lot.
And what do you mean by vocal exercises?
The different scales that you can run, kind of getting your mouth loosened up and your vocal cords loosened up, and it all helps. When I'm singing, I pronounce things very certain ways. I don't ever want to come across as mumbling while I'm singing. I want people to be able to understand everything, and that was all part of the classical training as well, because they want you opening your mouth and doing certain things certain ways. And I took a lot of the classical training and transposed it over to rock and roll. I have kind of my own style of doing it, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who's ever done it that way. I'm sure there's lots of them, but there's been a lot of great classical singers, and by no means am I comparing myself to these people, but like Freddie Mercury, and he was an opera singer. He was heavily involved in theater, and a lot of those people were my inspirations. I always thought that they put those things into great use, and I thought it made them more efficient at what they did.
Now, do you exercise your voice before you go on stage?
Every time. Sometimes in between sets. Just depends. I live about an hour from here, so I've got an hour on the way into town. I'll just run exercises the whole time, and once I feel like I'm warmed up, I'll put on some of my favorite music and I'll sing along with it. There's a lot of different vocal stylings, and I'm not saying one's better than the other, but there is a difference in singing things from Boston, from Brad Delp, and Freddie Mercury from Queen, compared to singing things from Jim Croce and James Taylor. Those are more relaxed singers. And when you're really powerhousing it all the time, then you really need to keep your voice in tip-top shape. You need those exercises, because if you don't, if you just go out there and give it everything you got in one go, well, the other 4 gigs in the week will be dead, because you're not going to have anything left.
When you perform every night, is there a strain on the voice that occurs when you're performing that often?
There is. Some of it you just can't do anything about. For example, if I was to go out singing one night, obviously by the 6th night, it's a little weaker than it was. It's not necessarily that it's worse. Sometimes it gets a little more raspy and it sounds a little bit better for rock and roll. It just depends on what it is. I mean, you listen to certain female singers and see that a lot, especially like Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt has a very raspy style voice, but her voice is absolutely beautiful. Sometimes that's the case. I remember I saw Bonnie last year in concert, and first thing she says on the microphone is, I need to apologize right now because I'm sick. I've got a lot of buildup in my throat and everything. But man, when she started it off, it was just better. So sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, especially in rock and roll, you want to have the edge to your voice as possible, the most grunt in certain songs. And when your voice is in tip-top shape in the very beginning, you're not going to get so much that. What you'll get with that is more your stuff where you're using falsetto, like Blind Faith and Steve Winwood. You're more able to do things like that. By the end of the work week, you might be able to do things from Nirvana, but you're still able to perform efficiently as a cover musician. And my original stuff, it works under the same principle. It just depends. But yeah, definitely, the more you play, the more it puts a strain on your voice, and over a period of time, I'm sure it'll have an impact on me more severely. But with the exercises and the training, I guarantee you it won't have as bad of an impact on me as it has with some people in the past.
So it sounds like you probably change your set list as you go through the week.
When I'm out of town, I play mostly original stuff. I play some covers depending on the venue. For example, I play for a lot of hard rock cafes, and they want a lot of covers. Depending on other venues, it's mostly original. Now in Savannah's a tourist town. It is what it is. So they want covers around here. If you want to make the money, you got to play the covers. I never really know what I'm going to play until I get there, because I've got over 1,700 cover songs that I know. And depending on the way I'm feeling, depending on my voice, I give people what they want without actually literally giving them what they want, if that makes any sense. I never have believed that you have to do 100% of every single thing the crowd wants. Because if you're a real performer, I think that you should have the ability to go out and actually dictate your performance. And crowds try, and sometimes the crowd's right. Sometimes they are. I mean, sometimes they're feeling what you're doing, and they start asking for things that suit you as a performer. And in those cases, then yeah, you're right. Go with what the crowd's doing. But in some cases, I'm up there obviously playing rock and roll, and the next thing you know, somebody's asking for Garth Brooks. And obviously, I'm not going to pay any attention to that because it's not what I do. I tell the crowd all the time, you've never been to a Kiss concert and heard a Garth Brooks song. If you're going to be sold on one thing, then give it your all. And I'm not saying I'm against any other genres, because I do play some other stuff like folk music. I do some Jim Croce, and I do a little R&B, classic R&B, because I like that kind of stuff. But I think you have to be true to what you are. I never really kind of know what exactly I'm going to do. Depends on the voice, depends on the mood of the crowd. I read crowds very well, and I can tell what they're kind of in the mood for in a lot of cases. Sometimes you can't really depend on a crowd to give you the best request, if that makes any sense. They might want to hear some Van Morrison, so the first thing they think of is Brown Eyed Girl. But if I give them Moondance or Into the Mystic or something like that, they're going to love that too. They just didn't think of that one first, so that's not the first one they screamed out. Certain songs, I just refuse to do them. It depends on the request, but if it doesn't fit me, if it doesn't describe Thomas Claxton, I'm not doing it. I try to stick true to what I am. There's a big difference in those style of gigs. When I'm playing in Savannah, like I said, obviously I'm being hired in tourist venues, and that's what they want. It's more of a job versus an artist kind of a thing. When I'm playing out of town, I play more listening rooms, and they don't make requests. They're there to listen to what you want to do or what you're giving them. I feel like sometimes outside of town, I get more of an opportunity to actually be an artist instead of someone that's just up there playing for a living. I respect both of them. A lot of performers, they'll look down on cover musicians, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. A lot of great performers in the past have done cover music and got their break playing cover music. You can name them. Back in the day, the Beatles played cover music. Joe Cocker made most of his career off of stuff that other people wrote. Same with Three Dog Night. And even more regional bands that were still highly influential, like Mother's Finest. Mickey's Monkey, one of their biggest hits. That's a Smokey Robinson song mixed with a Led Zeppelin song. It's a cover. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you can take a song and you can cover it and you can completely make it all your own. Not many people would listen to With a Little Help from My Friends by Joe Cocker and think, well, he covered that. I mean, he did, and they know it's a cover song, but he completely changed that song. Sounds nothing like the original. He took that song, he made it all his own, and that song was one of the songs that I would say defined his career. He played that song at Woodstock, for crying out loud. I really think it just all depends. But every gig is different. Every vibe is different, and every city's different. I do pride myself in being able to go out and get on the road, and sometimes that can be a little unnerving, because you don't know how people outside of your hometown are going to take to you. Like I said, I try to change it up and make every gig different.
Mm-hmm.
I think sound is important. I think sound quality, EQing for the room, which I think is becoming a lost art in a lot of cases. I really do. All the traveling I do, I see a lot of performers. And a lot of them just have one set sound that they make for themselves. And they use that exact same sound in every single gig in every different venue. And I don't agree with that at all. I think every venue needs a different sound. Because obviously every room is different. Some places have high ceilings, some people have low ceilings. Some have good insulation on the walls, some don't. You have to EQ for the room. And I know for years in Savannah especially, I battled the whole, oh my God, it's too loud thing. And that's because basically anything that was above what the norm was considered loud. They did an interview in Connect Savannah a handful of years back about volume and venues like that. It was so funny because they had, I always give him a lot of grief about this because they had the loudest musicians and they had my buddy Brett Barnard from Hitman on there. And I was like, he's not loud, because he's not. Hitman and those guys, they go in at a very good volume. And when I listen to those guys, I would never think there's a loud group. I'm probably louder as a solo artist than they are as a band.
Some people think anybody above Barry Manilow is loud.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And going into that kind of brings the point full circle, because I think that the faster performers realize that you're not going to make everybody happy, the better off you're going to be. Stop trying to please everybody. Be yourself. Go out there and do what you do. If you're good at what you do, people will pay attention. I've always been a believer in that. I remember when I first started out, I had a lot of people tell me that I was cornering myself because I was only doing what Thomas wanted to do, which wasn't even entirely accurate anyways. I was simply taking what Thomas's style was and the genre he preferred to play, and I was kind of intertwining what I wanted to do and what I thought crowds would like to hear, and bringing them different options than what they were necessarily thinking of. You could look at a lot of your favorite artists and look at their album, and you might only think of one song off of it, but you really know 6 or 7 songs off that album. And I mean, I've had people come up to me almost every single day and say, man, I haven't heard that song in years. I can't believe you played that. That makes me feel good. That really shows that what I'm doing works. I've managed to make a living strictly off of music now for, let's just say, over a decade. I love it. I appreciate it. I think when you can say that you've made a living doing what you love, I don't see where you're doing anything wrong, whether everybody agrees with you or not.
Tonight, we have local singer and songwriter Thomas Claxton in the studio. Well, I know one of my complaints is that some of the younger sound people mistake loud for balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the road or I've been in certain places, and by no means is this all of them or anywhere near all of them, but there are instances where they'll be like, hey, I'm your sound engineer for the night, and they have no idea what to do. I was literally at one venue a while back out of the state, and the guy comes up to me asking me where the cables and everything were to hook up the system. And I'm like, how the heck would I know? It's your venue. It's your place. You don't know where your own stuff is? And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if this guy doesn't even know where his own equipment is, what's my chances of him knowing how to EQ a board? And I was right. He had no idea. I use in-ear monitors a lot. I'm a big fan of in-ear monitors. I'm endorsed by 64 Audio. And when I started using those in-ears, my biggest thing was getting certain things out of certain engineers who were not used to working with in-ear monitors, asking them to put effects in my monitors and things like that, and they're looking at me like they're absolutely clueless. It's mind-boggling sometimes. I mean, most of the time you'll get people that know what they're doing behind the board. I think a sound engineer can make or break a performer. I really do. You are only as good as your sound engineer. You might be the best performer in the world, and you can go up there and sound horrible, whether you're playing that stuff correctly and singing it correctly or not. If the sound is ear-piercing or is making people cringe, you're damaging yourself. I know a lot of engineers joke around, the sound engineer is always right. No, they're not. Not every time. I've seen plenty of circumstances where they're not. But you can tell when you're working with a good quality engineer. You know, my friend Eric Winbush, he owns Dad's Production Studios here in Savannah, and he's been my engineer and producer now for a while. I mean, he's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I've seen him walk into places, having never worked on the particular board before, and he might have to figure out his way around that board, but he does it, and within 5 minutes, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows how to get me exactly what I want. We were in a place not too long back. I asked for something specific, and the engineer was a good engineer, a very talented guy, but this one particular thing that I needed, he didn't know where it was. Eric walked right up and looked at it for 2 seconds and figured it out and told him where it was. I think there's a lot of benefits of having a great engineer in your corner. Mm-hmm. I really do, even if it's just for that one night in that one venue.
Yeah, even big traveling groups. I mean, this was now, I would say, yeah, it was a couple years ago. Means it probably was a decade ago. I'm at that point.
Oh, come on, you ain't that old, man.
But Zoe Deschanel and her group, she and him came, and I walked out of that concert and looked at one of the production people from the Savannah Music Festivals. I go, what is going on here? And he said, not responsible. They brought their own people into the trust 50s, I think it was. It's maybe the Lucas. They had no concept of balance and what balance should be, and they substituted loud for balance.
You're talking these people bringing in their own engineers?
Yeah.
My experience with it has luckily been kind of the opposite, but I know it exists because I've seen it. But my work experience with some of these groups has been the opposite. That when I work with bands like Driving and Crying and Mother's Finest, and they've got their own engineers, and those engineers are great at what they do. They're trained basically for what that band desires. Now, I've gone into places, having walked in as a customer, and seen some bands that I've heard of before, and their sound was hideous. But then again, that's what they wanted, and it obviously wasn't affecting the ticket sales because people were there. They were buying it. So I guess in the end, if you're making the money, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, I've definitely seen plenty of circumstances like that. I've seen circumstances where the normal engineer for the place or for the festival, the venue, whatever you want to call it, had it set up a certain way that was just terrible. And then that band comes up with their own engineer and starts doing a sound check and completely fixes everything. And that's what a real engineer should do, in my opinion. I think there's a misconception today that anybody who gets behind a soundboard is automatically the sound engineer. No, you're just a guy standing behind a soundboard. That doesn't mean you know what to do with it. That's the same case with a lot of stuff. Anybody who can strum 3 chords is now a guitarist. No, not necessarily. I think there's different levels of it. Just because you sing in the shower does not make you a vocalist, in my opinion. But I think there are standards, and I don't necessarily want to say rules to art, because art is, in my opinion, the only indefinite science, is the way I've kind of looked at it. There's no definitive end to it. And to me, that's what always fascinated me by it. But I don't think everybody's cut out to do everything. Some people would probably say I'm not. So, you know, again, these are all just strictly opinions.
One of the things I love about your gigs is your interaction with the audience.
Sure.
It is laid back, it's fun, it's joking. You seem to know how far to go with some individuals and when to cut back. And how did that develop?
I owe a lot of that to several people. One of them was my dear friend, Chief Dennis Heinley. I used to go in and watch Chief, and he was the house musician at the Bayou Cafe from 1991 until he unfortunately passed away in 2011. I would sit there and watch him, and you think I say some stuff. I don't say anything close to what he used to say to some people. We had very different ways of going about it. Chief was very crass in a lot of ways. Like if he didn't like you, he'd tell you to F off, and that was just the end of it. I literally would see somebody who say something to him, got a bad vibe off of him, and he would boot him right out of the room. I thought was awesome. I really did, you know, because I never saw anybody control the crowd quite like Chief did. And that being said, he was also one of the most kind-hearted individuals. One second he would be like that to one person because that person really didn't deserve to be treated any differently than what he was doing to him. They were being very rude and disrespectful and everything, or rude to somebody else in the crowd, and he would let them have it. And then 2 seconds later, he would be the nicest person in the world to somebody, and he would crack the funniest jokes. But I figured out from watching him and watching Jerry Zambito, a lot of performers these days just get up and play. And I think that's fine if you're in that type of venue. But if you're not in that type of venue, you have got to know how to interact in between songs. And granted, sometimes I get the vibe off the crowd that they don't want to hear it. So I just play. And I might make comments every once in a while. You got to really know what it is that you're working when you're working a crowd. Some people like that were big influences to me. And I try to add more comedic timing into it. And by no means am I a comedian, but at the same exact time, I think by watching what some of these people say, let's just say I've amassed a plethora of one-liners over the years. And some of them I got from other people, some of them I just kind of thought up, and which I'm sure somebody else has said them in the history of mankind before. But like I said, there was a lot of influences on stuff like that. And you say that I know how far to push it. I've definitely pushed it over the limit on on several occasions. I've had to have some people thrown out of the venue because I had a guy one night several times get in my face because he didn't like what I said to him. The rest of the crowd thought it was hilarious, and maybe that's what really kind of got him going, was the fact that he thought everybody was laughing at him. I think there's an art to that as well. I really do. There's an art to working a crowd.
Now, how do you think you have changed as a performer over the years?
My experiences changed me as a performer. To be honest with you, that's kind of the natural way that it happened. I think when you've played 2 venues, you're not the same performer as when you've played 100 venues, and those are all just clubs. And then when you've played 100 clubs, you're not the same performer as you are when you've played theaters. And it just continues to progress. With every performance, you learn something new and you adapt to something different. My experiences have taken me from clubs to conventions, festivals, theaters, arenas. I remember the few times that I was able to actually walk out on stage in front of a large audience in several arenas. I never went back to a venue and performed quite the same again. It's definitely kind of a system shock. And 1 second you feel like you're at the highest point of your life, and the next second it's easy for a performer to go back to a small venue and feel like you're playing back in a shoebox. But at the same exact time, that doesn't mean that either one is better than the other. It just means that you should take your experiences and what got you to those levels and put them to every style of gig. It doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 5,000 people. I try to come across, especially when I'm in the middle of songs, as somebody who's putting effort into it. I think even in my most boring moments, when I'm just kind of feeling bleh on stage, I think that I still try to bring a certain level of performance to it. I'll put just as much in the middle of a work week into that performance as I will on a weekend performance. I don't hold anything back. I know what to do and what not to do, but I think that all those experiences taught me what to do in those cases. I remember when I first started playing at the coffee shop when I was a junior in high school. I was out there playing Mr. Tambourine Man type stuff. And nowadays I'm playing Rush. Over the years it's just molded. Your preferences in music change. People that you enjoy, that your influences change. I remember back then I was influenced by people like Bob Dylan, and not saying I'm not still, but that influence turned into David Bowie. That influence turned into progressive rock. I love prog rock. I love it. I like anything that takes challenge. If it's difficult, I want to give it a go. And if it sucks, I just won't do it again. But I love a challenge. I think that's also something that in some cases with some people has become a lost art. They don't want to push themselves as far as they can go. And me, I'm all into that.
Now, will you do that during a regular gig? Just do a number and say, I'm going to go this way with it.
Yep.
Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Almost every gig. Sometimes, every once in a while, I told you, sometimes the crowd can nail it. And I'll have this one person come up to me and go, man, do you know this song? And I'm like, man, I don't know it. I've never played it, but I know it well enough to get through it. That vocal part might be kind of challenging. Screw it. Let's go with it. And I'll give it a shot. Because I've got a pretty decent range vocally, and I'll try. And I can tell whether it's one by the end of the song that I just should not ever do again, or if it's one I need to go home and try to fine tune. I did that with an acoustic version of Bohemian Rhapsody. I had requests for that years ago, and I would look at people every time and go, you do realize that there's a lot of stuff going on in that song. I mean, I can't play all that stuff. And I remember I went home a little while back after that, and I was like, what is something? Because I like to do stuff that people don't ever expect to hear out of a solo guy. Not saying that a lot of what I do is not played by a lot of people, because it is. I mean, I'll do the Van Morrison stuff and the James Taylor stuff and all that, and I love that music, and Jim Croce. But on the same token, I'm going to pull out some Heart. I'm going to pull out some Rush, some Alice Cooper, stuff like that. And as a solo acoustic guitar performer, you don't normally hear that stuff. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but you don't normally hear it. And one day I was thinking to myself, I was like, what is something I can do that you're just not going to hear somebody try to pull off? And then it just hit me. I was like, Bohemian Rhapsody. That person requested Bohemian Rhapsody. And I went home and I started working on it. And what I do when I'm playing, I don't normally play what the literal acoustic guitar part is in these songs, because if I did that, sometimes the acoustic guitar is not even in the entire song. So I try to break it down to the chords, and I try to focus a lot on the rhythm, and I put a lot of the low end in my acoustic guitar because I want to make up for the lack of bass guitar. And obviously I don't do that when I'm playing with my full band. I EQ differently when I'm by myself. I want people to feel like that acoustic guitar is knocking them upside the head. I go home and I work up arrangements that are going to help me get through some of these complicated songs, but not necessarily stick true to what the literal acoustic guitar part was in that song. And Bohemian Rhapsody is a great example of that. In fact, if I played only what they were playing, it wouldn't sound good. It would be me singing with a little bit of guitar stuff going on in the background. I put all the stuff together, and my rhythm emulates the drummer. A lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases.
I hadn't put two and two together, but perhaps that's one of the reasons that I like your performances, because I do like a strong bass line, and I know in bands that's often my biggest complaint is there isn't enough bass. And I also like really strong rhythmic content, and you put both of those into your solo work.
I'll have people all the time come up to me and go, man, you use too much stuff. You got way too much equipment. Who says? Who makes that rule? When a lot of these bands back in the day were kicking, they didn't care how big it was. The bigger, the better. There's an aspect of it called a show. and I'm not saying that I put on a show when I'm playing these venues, but I do believe that, you know what? Bring out that stuff. If you got lighting, bring out your lighting. If you got a big speaker, bring out that big speaker. It doesn't matter if you're solo acoustic or not. Who makes the rules that says a solo acoustic guy has to have a little 10-inch speaker and one light? Who makes that rule? Now, if that's what they want to do, go for it. Because if that's what you want to do, then that's what you're preferring as a performer, and that's what you should do.
So let's compare and contrast. The second album, which is Return to Nowhere.
Yep.
That is really a rockin' album. Most of the things on that is really rockin'.
Oh, you listened?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
You mean you bought it and actually listened to it?
Yes.
Wow.
And some of it will wind up on our station. I mean, songs like The Truth really rock out.
Yeah. That one had a kind of a mixture of both. They weren't necessarily blended. There was a few songs on there that I intentionally made a little more mainstream acceptable, like Nowhere and Live a Lie.
Standing on the brink of laughter, clueless why I called your name, thinking it'd be funny if you only knew my face, edging closer to the day. Take a walk with me in silence, silence, silence. If it's meant to be, we'll know. I just need a bit of patience, reaching out to stay. I think I feel it now, I'm edging closer to the day. Jumping off the edge of indecision, falling from the top of a thunderstorm, landing in the beauty of your image. Close your eyes, live a lie. Turning corners, gaining envy, hide my lust of love and shame. Follow edging closer to the day. Treasure a life that follows daily. Know that death's the exit door. The clouds will come and bury everything that we hold truly. The sun will lie, edging closer to the day. Jumping off the edge of indecision, falling from the top of a thunderstorm, landing in the beauty of your image. Close your eyes. I have run forever, chasing time away. Leave me now with nothing in my eyes, in my eyes. Jumping off the edge of indecision, falling from the top of a thunderstorm, landing in the beauty of your image. Close your eyes. Jumping off the edge of indecision, falling from the top of a thunderstorm, landing in the beauty of your image. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Live a lie.
But certain songs, like The Truth, I just kind of wrote what I felt right then and there. I was once living a lie. I was once lost in the times, and I fought my way home back to the life of living a lie. Out of myself straight into yours, far from the facts, liars and whores, free from the storm. I'm down on the inside, I can't get enough. Give me more, more.
Follow me. watch my eyes slither on you. Don't blame them, they're searching for truth. My mind moves like a snake through your garden, running from you with your bitter truth, yeah. Take from me my bitter truth. Run from me 'cause I want you. Follow me, I'll show you the world. Love and hate into the truth. Let me set you free. Let me set you free. Let me set you free. Let me set you. View yourself, lie to the world. You lie too much to be my girl. Or is it me who lies to himself? Close my door, return with the truth, yeah. Take from me my bitter truth. Run from me 'cause I want you. Follow me, I'll show you the world. Love and hate into the truth.
You know, and I didn't think many people would kind of take to it. I had a great response off of that song when I really didn't think I would. But that just kind of shows you that you never know what somebody's going to take to. There's been lots of cases in the past where performers did not think something was going to do well. I remember reading one time that George Jones didn't want to do He Stopped Loving Her Today because he didn't think it was going to do anything. And Michael Jackson was not all hip on Billie Jean. And they wound up becoming some of the biggest songs. So you never know what people are going to like. Every song that I write has some sort of meaning to it. I never just write just to write. Something has to have happened or affected me. And to be honest with you, some of those songs, I mean, I released that album in 2011. I wrote a lot of those songs in like 2009. So if you were to ask me right now, I couldn't even tell you what all the lyrics to it were because some of them I haven't played in a while because I've been kind of focusing on the newer stuff. I had a lot of good feedback off of that album. I sold, just in Savannah, just in the downtown area to be specific, I sold over 2,000 copies of that. And I know that because I would order them 1,000 at a time. After I ordered the first 2,000 and sold all of them in my downtown gigs, then I just started having individual ones printed up at that point. So I didn't need to order another 1,000 of them. That one actually sold pretty well for a local type thing.
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
If you enjoy our programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com. You're listening to music local and sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have local singer and songwriter Thomas Claxton in the studio. And that's really interesting too, because what they'll hear is you doing covers. Mm-hmm. And then the album, of course, is all originals.
Yeah. Now, I did do a cover song on my first album. I covered a Working Class Hero by John Lennon, and because Lennon was always my biggest inspiration in writing. A lot of the times what's drawing people to buy those albums when I have them out there on for sale is they'll come up to me and go, what all's on this? And they'll hold up the CD or whatnot, and I'll be like, that's all original stuff. And okay, I'm going to buy this just because I love your voice. You're a good performer. I mean, and God bless them for thinking it. So a lot of the times it's the performance that's really selling them on it. I guess they're figuring if I sound like that doing a cover song, what would I sound like doing my own thing? And sometimes I'll get requests. I mean, there's no better feeling really in performing when somebody walks up to you and asks to hear one that you wrote, and they'll be specific about it. When I put that album out for a while, I would have people returning to my gigs and going, can you play Nowhere? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. You know, man, I love that song.
Take me back to the one I love. Won't you leave me back where I came from? I can't stand you while you hold me from above.
Where I've been
the time, you're just one of a kind with the mind of vegetation. Leave me alone and take me back home, leave me to my imagination. After this trip, grant me a wish, keep me from this situation. Leave me, fear me, leave me. Nowhere, nowhere close to where I've been. I'm going nowhere, nowhere. I won't go again. I'm going nowhere, nowhere close to where I've been. I'm going nowhere, nowhere. I won't go again. Won't you take me back to the one I love? Won't you leave me back where I came from? Nowhere, nowhere close to where I've been. Nowhere, nowhere. I won't go again. I'm going nowhere, nowhere close to where I've been. Nowhere, nowhere. I won't go again.
Even on my upcoming album, I haven't even released it yet, but that song, Maybe I'm Crazy, I'm getting requests for that all the time. I mean, all the time. I think I probably get 4 or 5 requests for that per week. It's always just a great feeling, man. It really is. And it is a contrast. Like you said, it's different 1 second to go from cover music that you know has already been internationally accepted to playing your stuff that you don't know if people are going to dig. I think sometimes that fear is what prevents a lot of people from moving forward with it. Nobody likes rejection. My answer to fear is psych yourself out. Go ahead and prep yourself. Think that, you know what, they might reject it, but if they do, so what?
Maybe I'm Crazy is when if people ask generically for a original work, that's often one you'll bring out.
Yeah, I'll do it now, especially a lot because I'm pushing that single. Right now is the time that I really need to be going full-fledged with that song. Matter of fact, I just got a text today. They're wrapping up the music video for it tomorrow in New York.
Why don't we listen to some stuff off the new album?
Yeah, I'll play an acoustic version of it for you.
Yeah?
Right here.
Breaking down satisfaction staring down my simple fall that I don't need any distractions. I'm caught in a trance. Climbing the wall, and I'm coming down. Not to be useless, threw it away. I'm feeling enslaved. My mind, can I get through this? I think I'm seeing what I've been feeling, looking at me, never ending. You're on the outside, looking in. You think I'm running, and I think it's funny. This love I hide away. Maybe I'm just crazy. Needless to say, my road never turns. Life on the edge, no irritations, keeping the course, the time flying by. My simple fall, relaxation. I think I'm seeing what I've been feeling, looking at me, never ending. You're on the outside, looking in. You think I'm running, and I think it's funny. This love I hide away. Maybe I'm just crazy, little crazy, oh so crazy.
What was the inspiration of that song?
That song was actually written kind of off the cuff. I actually had somebody come up to me a while back, and they told me that they had an opportunity to submit a song of mine to DreamWorks, but they needed it to be a country song. And I was like, okay, I'm not performing that live. Obviously, if it becomes a hit, I mean, I'm not stupid. But the chances of that were pretty slim. And I was like, okay, so I'll write something. And originally that song had a much more country feel to it. They submitted it, and it didn't do anything. It wasn't what they were looking for. Matter of fact, the response I got from the DreamWorks representative that listened to it saying that it was an excellent song, but it was a little too much rock and roll. Because I recorded it with a full band. They said that if it was a little more country, they would have probably given it some more thought, but it just wasn't country enough for them. which is understandable. I think probably the only country thing to it was the twangy chords and my southern accent probably. So when I come out with this new album, I wanted to include it on that album because I had already recorded it. It was already done, but I wanted to kind of give it a little touch up because this new album is a rock album. So the performers that played on it, which is all the guys in my band here, Thomas Claxton and the Myth, that's Craig Johansson, Paul Cooper, and Rodney Smith. They all laid down their parts to it, and I brought in another guitarist to add to Craig's part because I wanted 2 guitar parts in it. His name is Tony Sarno. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee. He came down and put a lot of open power chords on it, and we kept some of the stuff. I think we redid the drums to give them more of a rock feel. So that's the finished product that wound up coming out. And
it's going to be interesting to see what the reaction is because we'll do both of these. We'll do the album version and do this version, which is really a ballad.
No, it really is. It was funny, too, because when I recorded the music video to it, which will be coming out very soon, that song in particular is getting reviewed in the Huffington Post coming up in the next couple of months. But when I did the music video to it, I went to the lady who's directing it. Her name is Jonna Palminteri. She's the wife of Chaz Palminteri, the actor. She said, "What are you seeing in this?" I said, "I want to see what your interpretation of it is." And she came up with this whole thing about how a relationship I was in was coming to an end. And it was not exactly what I envisioned when I wrote it, but it made complete sense. Because I like to see what people's interpretations of what you write are. Very rarely does someone, in my opinion, actually probably get 100% of what that artist was thinking when he wrote it or when she wrote it. A lot of times, art is interpretation. Now, obviously, you know what they were thinking about when they do an interview and tell you what it was. That song was thinking about going through struggles, thinking about things that were working and then they weren't working, and having to kind of redesign your life. And I think I wrote that song in 2013 or 2014, and it's now getting put on this album and coming out in 2017. Her interpretation actually works out much better for a music video. That story that Jonna Palminteri wanted to tell with my song actually makes a lot more sense in the mainstream. Making a music video about how you're going through struggles in life, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Making a music video about relationships coming to an end and maybe you're crazy and all this kind of stuff, but maybe she's crazy, and that makes a lot more sense for a music video. So it's a lot easier to tell a story with something like that.
The years before, nothing short of satisfaction, staring down my simple fall, and I don't need any distraction. I'm caught in a trance, climbing the wall, but I'm coming down, not to be useless. I threw
And again, I'll let the audience judge how they perceive the differences between the solo version and the rock version.
Yeah. I mean, the
different.
premise of it's still there.
Yeah.
I mean, you still see where they're both at. But in my opinion, it's after I had released it, I went out to L.A. for a little while, and one of the gigs that I played out there was at a place called Kulak's Woodshed. I went there and played that song, and Kulak's has a thing where they have professional guys running the video cameras and engineers running the sound, and for $20 you get up there and play one song and they send you the finished video of it, finished. And so I was like, heck yeah, I'll do that. Here's $20, and I got a video now, a live performance in Hollywood, California. That's great. So I did it, and when I heard it, that song really does sound like a different tune by itself, because it was just me and the acoustic when I did that in Hollywood.
So how about another song from the new album?
Walking out of the room, can't hold my head up. Too much pain, doom and gloom, I hear it all, never silence. Way too much. The world needs a hero. There isn't me who's to judge. Am I the man of steel? But keep in mind, I didn't ask for this. Fear is cold like freezing rain. I know you need my courage. Keep in mind we're not the same. I have to live with the truth. I need to buy the lies to save. Faster than a bullet. I've been true, but I won't care. I'll accept my destiny. Keep in mind, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for this. But I will fly to help you see tomorrow so high above the sea of sorrow. I will fight. Turn my head and walk away, ignore the cries of those in pain. Now but there's a day to save. The sun will shine after the rain. Keep in mind, I didn't ask for this. No, I didn't ask for this. But I will. Changing rage, ever building a light, ever leads to the calm before the storm. I'll take what's given, peace will be my reason. A light ever leads to the calm before the storm. The calm before the storm. Calm before the storm. I will fly.
Now, it sort of sounds like you tend to write the lyrics first or get the ideas of the lyrics first and then you put the hooks to it.
Actually, no. I'll come up with a melody first. I sit there and fiddle around on my guitar, and then when I come up with something I think sounds kind of catchy, then I start kind of piecing it together with lyrics. You know, some people can go out and knock songs out of the park within no time. One of the people that I'm working with right now, my acoustic duo partner, April Henry, she's very good at that. I swear to God, she can start writing lyrics, and 1 hour later, she's got something that really sounds great. And I'm the kind of person where I want to hear that melody first. I want to hear an idea for the song in my head, something I can kind of structure it around. I might get a little ways with it one night and then start working on it again the next night, and eventually a week later I've got a song. So I'm a little more time consuming with some of it. You know, I've written songs in one day or one evening before, and like maybe I'm crazy. I knocked that out in one go. So it really kind of depends on the mood I'm in at the moment. I don't ever want to let a good idea go to waste, so I'll work on it, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily in the creative flow mode at the moment to finish an entire thing. Sometimes get kind of stuck in a part and you need to go to sleep. You know, you wake up the next day fresh and think of it again.
Some people write some lines down and put them aside. Some people do recordings on their iPhone of hooks. Do you do that as well?
I've got a little voice recorder,
Okay.
you know, in the car, a little MP3 recorder, and I'll sit there, and if something just hits me right then, I'll kind of make a recording note of it, you know, because obviously I can't write it down while I'm driving. Yeah, I mean, I've always got stuff like that. And sometimes, you know, I have written songs where I just thought of a line or two that just sounded really catchy, and you know, it's happened before. It's just that normally I'll come up with some music first, fiddling around at the house, just kind of noodling on the guitar, and then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, that sounds all right. That sounds pretty cool, and I'll kind of run with it, just see whatever comes out of it. I think every artist has a different method to the madness.
So tonight we have had local singer-songwriter Thomas Claxton in the studio, and I really loved this conversation. Thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you for having me, Dave, and we'll meet up again. It's been a pleasure. I mean, seriously, I mean, this is a great interview, honestly.
Well, thank you very much.
And if you don't mind, tell people where they can go check out my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if you just go to thomasclaxton.com, you can find out anywhere I'm playing all around the country. You can get downloads and listen to videos, things like that, and see, kind of keep up with my career, or follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Thomas Claxton Music.
Great. Thank you again so very much.
You're good, man. You're awesome.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, that ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear